Welcome to the Bright July podcast, brought to you by Luxy Health and proudly supported by Zeiss and EssilorLuxottica. I'm joined today by Dr. Gareth Lingham, postdoctoral research fellow at the Lions Eye Institute and a researcher specializing in myopia management, outdoor time and ophthalmic epidemiology. Gareth completed his PhD at the University of Western Australia on the benefits of childhood outdoor time for myopia prevention, and has worked on clinical trials of atropine eye drops for myopia management in Dublin. Let's get into it. Dr. Gareth Lingham, thanks for coming onto the Bright July podcast.
Thanks for having me.
We just want to ask you our first question. So most parents assume that any time outside is good for their kids' eyes and that screens are the main culprit for the rising myopia rates. But the research tells us a more of a nuanced story. Can you untangle these two assumptions and give us a picture of where the science actually stands on this?
Sure. So it's absolutely right that they are tangled concepts, so that the amount of time we spend outside and the amount of time we spend on near work tend to sort of inversely correlate. So if you're not doing near work when you're outside, and if you're inside, you're obviously maybe doing more close-up work. It's very difficult, or has been difficult, I suppose, for us to untangle some of this correlation. Some really good evidence came from the Sydney myopia study in Sydney in the middle 2000s, and they actually showed that even if you're doing close-up work when you're outside, you're still getting some benefits of being outside for your eyes. So that's a really important point, that you can do some near close-up work when you're outside and still get some of the benefits that we know come from being outside.
Yeah.
In terms of screens, the evidence is still catching up on this. I think one thing that's really important to note is that the increase in myopia rates started well before screens were around. So after World War II, the rates of myopia started increasing, particularly in parts of East and Southeast Asia. And that was well before computers and phones and tablets were around. The evidence so far has pointed towards screens slightly increasing your risk of myopia. And we actually know that any sort of near work will increase your risk of myopia. So if you spend lots of time on books or studying, doing that close-up work for long periods of time, then your risk of myopia does increase mildly. What the evidence is probably showing at the moment is that screens are not worse than books or printed material that we typically also spend lots of time looking at up close. Now, one thing that's really important to think about when we think about screens, though, so they might be mildly increasing risk of myopia, but so do books. Problem is that screens are quite good at keeping our attention or capturing our attention and then keeping it. And so we're probably likely to spend more time looking at screens than books, or it's easier to look at screens for long periods of time than it is to look at books and other printed material. So if screens are then increasing the amount of time we're doing close-up work, then that's further increasing our risk of myopia. So although they're probably not more harmful than books based on the current evidence, they might be increasing the actual total amount of time we're spending doing near close-up work, might be actually reducing the amount of time we're spending outside because we tend to do near work inside. And so there's an important consideration when we think about screens from that perspective. So they're not causing the myopia, they're not causing the increased rates of myopia that we're seeing around the world, but they certainly might be a contributing factor to the changes that we're seeing at the moment.
Okay, so I guess a tip for parents in that respect, if the kids are having some time on a device, there could be some benefit in getting them out in the backyard and doing that outdoors instead of in the living room. That sort of thing.
Exactly. So and some of the conversations I've had with kids, they could do homework and things outside. The problem with screens is that if it's a bright day outside, you tend not to be able to see the screen. So maybe doing screen work outside is a bit harder than, say, reading a book outside. Yeah. But it's certainly one thing to think about, or one thing that's an option. That probably looking at screens inside is worse than looking at screens outside.
Okay, cool. Now, like a lot of your research you've looked at is the dosage of outdoor time, how much time actually moves the needle when it comes to myopia prevention. So what does the evidence say there, and is there a number that the parents should be aiming for?
Yeah, so any amount of time outside is probably beneficial, and the more the better when we're talking about myopia. We don't have a magic number that you need to get all the benefits, and probably just the benefits kind of accrue as you spend more time outside. The number that we think is practical and is a good number to aim for is 2 hours outside every day. And this is we've come to this conclusion based on a mix of practicality. So we think it's an achievable amount of time outside, and we think it's also enough time to get see some reasonable benefits from that outdoor time in terms of preventing myopia. So 2 hours can sound like a lot of time outside for parents and families. You don't need to do this all at one time, so you can break up that 2 hours over the day and get 15 minutes here, 15 minutes there, half hour here, and achieve your total 2 hours that way. So yes, it's a lot of time, but it's also an achievable amount of time. And so that's the advice we give to parents, to aim for 2 hours outside every day. If you can get more, even better.
Actually, just based around that, I guess kids in summertime, pretty easy to get more outdoor time, long hours in the day, warmer weather. Winter time, a little bit more tricky. Like the sun sets earlier, it's a bit chillier. Now, I suppose like when we're looking at outdoor time and over the course of the year, like do we have any understanding of the build up during that summer period? Does that offset any time lost in winter time? Do you have any insights on that?
So absolutely, yes. There's actually seasonal changes in eye growth. So when you become short-sighted, it's typically because our child's eye has grown too long. So there's a certain amount of growth that's normal, and we see excessive eye growth that can cause short-sightedness early in life. When we track eye growth over summer and over winter, we actually see that it's slower over summer and it speeds up during winter. So there's this really easy to see, easy to spot variation in eye growth that occurs over the year. And that's probably because in summer, either the light is brighter, there's more daylight, or also because it's school summer holidays and kids are going outside more because it is warmer. And so we're getting that extra daylight exposure. Now, it's important, one thing to remember about summer, yes, it's warm, yes, there's lots of light, but there's lots of UV, ultraviolet radiation at the same time. And so it's important to remember that while there's lots of daylight, there's actually about the same amount of safe daylight. So the UV index is very low in the mornings, and it increases and peaks at midday and then drops down in the evening. So there's about 3 hours after sunrise and about 3 hours before sunset where the UV index is in the safe range. You don't need any sun protection when it's 3 or lower. But obviously if you're outside during the middle of the day and during those high UV times, you do need lots of sun protection. Now in winter, we have less daylight. It's colder, it's harder to go outside, but there's less UV. So in most capital cities in Australia, except for Darwin and Brisbane, the UV index in the middle of winter, so about now, is below 3 for the whole day. So you actually don't need any sun protection if you were to go outside in most capital cities in Australia at this time of year.
Yeah.
And so it's the time when we need daylight the most because our eye is growing the fastest. And it's the safest time for us to spend time outside because the UV index is lowest. So it's one of the most important times of the year for us to be making sure that we can still go outside even though it's cold, even though it's darker.
That's excellent. And I guess in Australia, the UV protection public health messaging has been fairly successful. Do you feel like that's kind of affected the way that people, behave and go outdoors? Have you seen any insights?
Yes, I mean it has, and in a good way because we're seeing the rates of melanoma as stabilising. The incidence of melanoma in our country is stabilising, and in the younger generations may even be declining. So this is a really positive benefit that we've seen from the sun protection campaigns that have been ongoing in Australia for the last 40 years. We do find when we talk to people about short-sightedness, a lot of people aren't aware that spending time outside is good for your eyes. And one of the questions we get is, well, I was told daylight is not good for you because it causes skin cancer. And that's true. So we need to make sure that we can really balance this message. We do not want to send kids outside in the middle of summer, in the middle of the day, and prevent their short-sightedness, but also increase their risk of skin cancer. And at the same time, we don't want people to spend all the time inside to prevent them getting skin cancer, but then get myopia. So really looking to get the best of both worlds. We don't need UV exposure to prevent myopia. So we're looking for those times a day where you're still getting sunlight, but the UV index is low. They're the best times of day to go outside for your myopia, because you can get the best of both worlds. If you do need to go outside during high times of UV, where the UV index is above 3, where you need sun protection, so you can wear a hat, you can wear your sunglasses, sunscreen, clothing to protect your skin, and also you can seek shade to avoid direct sunlight. One of the questions I do get asked a lot is if daylight is good for your eyes in terms of preventing myopia, does wearing sunglasses and hats, which we know will prevent the amount of light getting to your eyes, does that actually reduce the benefits? And the answer is we don't think it does, to the best of our knowledge. And there's some good evidence from Singapore where they showed that even if you wear sunglasses, even if you wear a hat, the amount of daylight reaching your eyes on a regular day is still far, far brighter when you're outside wearing hat and sunglasses than compared to when you're inside. So you're still getting lots of daylight to your eyes, but you're still cutting down that UV that's actually reaching both your face and your eyes as well. So again, I would suggest sun protection is extremely important. We need to make sure we're incorporating this into our messaging when we're talking about getting outside to prevent myopia.
Fantastic. Well, based on that as well, people are sometimes a little bit shy to be in that direct sunlight. It's a bit harsh for them. So there's lots of kids that might go outside and they're under cover on the playgrounds or under shade under trees. So going back to that point, does that still count as outdoor time, or does the intensity of that sunlight really, really matter when it comes to myopia?
So yeah, it still counts, and a bit like wearing the hat and the sunglasses, the amount of daylight you're getting if you're in the shade or if you're in a partially covered outdoor structure is still going to be a lot brighter than if you're indoors. There's questions about if you sit next to a big open window and you're getting lots of light coming in, is that still the same as being outside? And we don't know the answer if you're getting benefits from that. At the moment, it seems reasonable that that's better than sitting in the dark corner of your room. So the answer, the messaging we're going for is that more daylight is better, and get that any way you can. So if you're in the shade, that's good. And shade is, as I said, if there's a high UV index, you should be in the shade anyway. So you're still getting that benefit if you're outside.
Yeah, because a lot of parents, when I talk to them about outdoor time, they assume that I mean stand in the middle of an open park and be blasted with the sun rays, and that's probably not the message that we're aiming for. No. So a little bit of education goes a long way.
Yeah. That's right. And even physical activity is often mixed up. So you don't need to be physically active when you're outside to get the benefits for your eyes. You don't necessarily need to be looking in the distance either. As I said, you can actually probably be reading. It's probably not going to offset some of the benefits a little bit, but it's better, certainly better than reading inside. So you can do some of those just activities that you would normally do indoors. You can take them outdoors, and that's still going to be better for your eyes.
That's a really good point as well, because when I talk to people about outdoor time, they do think that it's physical activity or a big effort, go out to the beach or drive out to a park and do a hike. But it's those moments where you can just take things that you would do indoors and just sit on the back porch or on a balcony and still receive those benefits while basically being passive, and incorporate that into your daily routine when you can.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's probably the easiest way to increase the amount of time outside that you and your family can get is by that incidental things that you have to do anyway. You can try and take them outside and do them in an outdoor setting.
Excellent. Okay.
That's a wrap on today's episode. Big thank you to Dr. Gareth Lingham for sharing his research and insights with us today. If you found this valuable, please share it with a parent or family who could benefit. Every kid deserves the best chance at healthy eyes. Bright July runs through to August 2nd, so get your family outside, log your outdoor time, and let's make this month count.
This podcast is brought to you by Luxy Health and sponsored by Zeiss and Essilor Luxottica. Until next time.